Back in your life on this beautiful evening or afternoon, or is it morning? Is it 2 a.m.? Is it 2 p.m.? Nobody knows what time it is, but we are here to talk fantasy football here on the Fantasy Underbosses. We are back for episode 3 of the Fantasy Underbosses. I am Joe the Show, joined by my good partner, as always, the Don Corleone himself. Don, how we doing, my friend? It is a lovely day. We are back in action. By the time this comes out, we will have 2 official shows in the books. The third time's the charm. So I guess after this, you and I have to sign and make it official or whatever if we're going to do this forever.
We haven't signed and made it official already.
I'm kidding.
Jesus Christ! Joe.
I know
Scaring the fuck out of me.
my mail has a checking and a savings, and it takes a little time to get from my checking to the Kevin Hart joke. Anywho, we got another great show for you in store today. We want to thank everybody hanging out with us. First, before we go any further, let's do a few bits of housekeeping. First, as always, like the video if you like this video. We really appreciate it, and every like goes a long way. Subscribe to our page if you really like it. That does the wonders as well. We have such great content right now that we're starting to churn out. We got the weekend warm up every week. We've got the Golden Ticket Show, which is our live betting show. Which right now, we're with the World Cup about to end. We're going to be a little bit in the dog days, but Don's putting out some banger summer league picks every day. We've got the guys that are putting together content for college football previews and everything. So we've got that stuff going on. But once we get into football season, especially, it is going to be hell for leather. We are going to be going crazy. We got so many people that have just great minds and great abilities to push out content. So we want you guys to be able to enjoy it. So be on the ground floor of what we got going on here with the Gold Ignorance Podcast Network. We really would appreciate it. Tell a friend as well if they like dudes bantering frivolously and making bad jokes. I think that's what we are. And of course, with this show here, as you can see, my friend with that ring. I mean, if you follow us, you hopefully can get yourself one of those this football season. We also want to thank our sponsor for our network sponsor, BetVisors. We will talk about them later on. And then lastly, Don's got it down in his name here, but our Twitter page, FF Underbosses on Twitter, or the artist formerly known as Twitter. Shout out to Elon. We're going to be more and more active on that as we start dropping episodes. Episode 1 dropped a week ago. Episode 2 dropped on Tuesday, and we're releasing this on Thursday. And so just so we can get everything caught up, and then hopefully, we're going to continue an episode a week for a few more weeks, and then once we get in August, we're probably going to start banging out a couple. So that is what we got right now. We're going to get into today's show, Don. Unless I missed something, did I miss anything? Did we do good?
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right, I like that. All right, on today's show. As you can tell in the title, the big thing here is we are going to go. We are going to go over the some more training camp quick hit storylines as always. But the biggest thing is we are going to hit the AFC West today, our second of the 8 divisional previews. But let's get things going with our quick hitter storylines. First, we are going to head to the NFC South. And we are going to talk about the Atlanta Falcons, who they decided to sign in the offseason the under 6-foot version of the quarterback they already currently have. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but they had Michael Penix. They signed Tua Tagovailoa. So early on, we're trying to kind of find out who the quarterback one is going to be. What's important? How important is it that one guy is compared to the other? Do you have to draft different? So, Don, let's talk about the Atlanta quarterback one position at this point in training camp.
Yeah, I think it's going to hurt me to say, but I think Tua is the clear QB1 here. Just looking at bodies of work, we've seen Tua produce with the caliber of receivers that Atlanta has in Drake London, and even with the option out of the backfield in Bijan Robinson. So I think that helps build his workload a little bit, especially with a couple guys that Tua has played with, has finished in top 5 in fantasy wide receivers. Running backs finished in top 5. So there's a lot of things you can build off there. With Penix, the issue is the age. They're kind of roughly around the same age, even though that two was playing in the league a little longer, which is a little worrying. But the injuries are starting to pile up for Penix. I think he's too inconsistent for my liking. Yeah, Tua can be that way too, but then there's the random week where Tua puts up 350 plus, 3 touchdowns, and the Falcons look like a great organization for pulling them. So right now, I would say that Tua is probably the best. You would want Tua as your quarterback because it helps Drake London's draft stock and it helps Bijan's draft stock.
That was what I was going to ask next. Do you feel like it will affect how we draft the Falcons? I mean, the Falcons have some very important skill players when it comes to fantasy football. They have Bijan, who might be Bijan's going to be number one, a potential number one pick. He'll go number one in some drafts. I don't know if I would assume, probably Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the consensus number one overalls right now, but Bijan is on the short list, regardless. Drake London is a first or second rounder, especially after the year he had last year with a little bit of quarterback up and down weirdness. Kyle Pitts, a lot. Now, granted, his year last year was weird because a lot of his production was hogtied to just a few major outbursts in games, but he did have the most. I say that to also say he had the best consistent year since his first season. After a few years of disappointment. So those are three really important guys in the fantasy landscape. Do you think it matters that one of them is starting over the other for how we try to attack drafting these big name players come draft season here in a few weeks?
Yeah, because I think for me personally, right, I have the number one in I think 2 leagues coming up right now. So like I'm watching this very closely because if it is Tua, I'm probably going with Bijan because I'm expecting Bijan to put up 370 plus. Not saying that Jahmyr Gibbs won't. I think Jahmyr Gibbs could have probably one of the best fantasy running back seasons that we've had in probably the last 5 seasons. I think he has the potential to be that good this year, especially with that weaker schedule that they get. We'll dive
And he's
into
their
that.
lone guy now.
We'll dive into that when we start talking NFC North. But I just think the big thing for me is, looking at where both these guys are in their career. Penix is still trying to prove himself. Tua has proven that he is a starting caliber quarterback in this league, as much as I hate to say it again. But I think with where they're at currently, if they want to kind of compete, because again, the NFC South's a little down this year. If they want to compete, you need to be able to win the games early, and I think Tua gives you the best chance to win in September and October.
I think that's a very good point because I will leave it at that for now. We don't want to bury our NFC South leads too soon, but I do think that is a very good take, and it's something that we'll continue to monitor. By the time we get to the NFC South, hopefully that is something that can start to matriculate itself a little bit better. Let's see here. Next up on our training camp stories list, Travis Hunter. We head down to Jacksonville. We talked about the Jags last week or earlier this week on our episode, talking about the AFC South in our first divisional preview. We never really mentioned Travis Hunter. We talked a lot about their receiver room. We talked about Parker Washington. We talked about Brian Thomas having a resurgence. But we did not really mention Travis Hunter. So the question here, do you think he even has a fit offensively with this team anymore? We've heard them talk about them wanting to keep him defensive only. Do you expect that to be the case? Do you think he'll get some sprinkles? Is even worth drafting as an option on offense now?
I mean, probably not. I think he's got the Devin Hester upside. Kick returns, special teams, stuff like that, and then the occasional runs. But I don't see right now where they're at. I just don't see them being the favorite or him being a favorite option of Trevor Lawrence. Parker Washington broke out last year. They traded for Jacoby Myers. They still have BTJ in year 3, which we'll talk about year 3s in a little bit. But I just think there's better receivers on the squad right now for Trevor Lawrence. In order for the Liam Cohen offense to flourish, they looked a lot better without Travis Hunter on the field last year. So I think that trend continues. I wouldn't draft him.
Yeah, the only question I would have to follow up on that is, do you think Hunter could have had the second half outburst that Parker Washington had? if he didn't get hurt.
I'm going to
There was a
say
few moments
no.
he had. Like, I know they got blown out,
Correct.
but that Rams game, he was awesome.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say no just because I think that, again, this proves that you have to play one side of the ball. You can't play both consistently. So that's where I'm at.
Going back to the AFC South, or to the NFC South, excuse me, we are looking at the Carolina Panthers. The last couple seasons, they have been a two-horse race in their backfield, one way or another, depending on the litany of different cats that they've had. Chuba Hubbard has always been one, but he has always had a second man in that backfield. But now them losing Rico Dowdle, the question is who's going to be that person to step up? Is Jonathan Brooks going to get back into the action? Trevor Etienne is somebody that people think could have an interesting fantasy season. How important are we looking at this running back two situation in Carolina? And do you have a guy right now that you have pegged as the favorite?
I don't really have someone that's pegged as a favorite. I just think it kind of helps Chuba's value a little bit when you're taking him later in the draft. Because if I'm going to start a running back that's probably going to get 70 to 75% of the workload in like round 9 or 10, I think that's great value that you can have. I off topic, but on topic, I have him over rushing yards this year, which is set at like 825, which I think is a little low. I know Chuba can get to 1,000. I think Carolina is kind of sneaky because, again, they're not predicted to be high in the NFC South this year. They're not predicted to probably make the playoffs again like they did last year. So I think a lot of people are kind of sleeping on them, and with that sleeping, I think it's building the ability up. So I don't trust the Jonathan Brooks, who hasn't been healthy in 2 full years, until Etienne can show me that, or A-Chain, however they all pronounce it, um, can show me that he can take over a little bit more of the workload. I'm trusting Chuba Hubbard, and I'm kind of just staying away.
He's only the guy in Travis on the Saints is A-Chain. The guy on the Panthers, because he's not as far south. He's still ETM. I think that's the rule. You have to once you get past mile marker 209 in Louisiana, then all of a sudden the name changes.
Whatever it is.
So like when they play like if they have to play up north this year, it'll be Travis Etienne. At least he knows. We'll see. We're gonna continue to ride that out as long as we can. All right. Next up on our list here, speaking of heading up north, we head to the Minnesota Vikings, and there's a lot of ways that you can tackle some of their offseason questions and their training camp questions. But one of the ones we are going to talk about here is we're going to stay in the running back room. Aaron Jones for the Vikings coming off of one of the least productive years he has had. He did with Green Bay a few years ago due to injury, but outside of these last couple seasons, he has been regularly healthy. But last year, the lowest rushing total for him in a full season since he became a full-time starter, even though he did only play 12 games. He only had 2 rushing touchdowns. The question here is Aaron Jones still the clear running back 1 in Minnesota?
I would say yes, just because, again, there are other options. I mean, Jordan Mason's been a good, like, regular running back. He's had over 750 the last 2 years rushing. I believe he's averaging about just over 5 yards a carry, which is good. I just don't think you can get it consistently from them. And with the Vikings, they're going to need the rushing attack to be good this year in order to create the play action, which is how Kyler Murray makes his money. But I do see a way where Aaron Jones, again, 31, it's kind of where you start to plateau, whether or not you can stay for a couple more years, or if you start plateauing and you're working your way out of the fantasy landscape. I think he's got another year, and then Minnesota potentially finds a running back of the future, because I'm not buying on any of the other guys that they have in the pipeline right now. But I do think that Jordan Mason could take a little bit of the workload away. But again, where you're drafting Aaron Jones, you're drafting him as like a spot start, or a guy that's starting because your starting running back's either on bye or hurt. You're not drafting Aaron Jones to be your RB2 or a flex spot every week.
I think that yeah, you're definitely drafting Jones, and you're not thinking that he's going to be like if he flirts with the top 2025 season, you're like, okay, we did it. I don't think he's going to be a guy that you're sitting here taking in the top 8 or 9 rounds. That's okay. This is Aaron Jones, and we're go. If you're going into the season and Aaron Jones is someone you have to start every week to start the season, then something went drastically wrong. Now watch, I will be stuck with him in a league, no doubt, and I'll talk myself into it if that is the case. All right, inside baseball talk. Do you want to talk about this last topic here? Or do you want to move it to our preview of the team we have coming up?
Um, we can. I thought about that after. I feel like what we should. I feel like what we should do is we should start with them so that way the
Okay.
transition works for us.
Okay, well, let's do this, and this is going to be perfect. We are moving into the AFC West, and it is a couple new, a new era in Vegas. Again, I feel like we've spun that wheel a few times. Uh, a different world for the Chiefs after missing the postseason last year. They've got some new faces coming in. They've moved some big names out on both sides of the ball, and their superstar quarterback coming off of a major injury. Chargers having another good season, but a disappointing end to their season, thanks to Don's Patriots. And then speaking of another team that Don's team knocked out in the playoffs, Denver had an amazing year, and it culminated in their quarterback getting hurt while taking a knee in a playoff game, and then them losing in the AFC title game because it snowed and their starting quarterback was dealing with a broken ankle. I say all that to say, let's start with the Vegas Raiders, shall we? Shout out to Al Davis and all of his children. Let's start with this, and this is tabled to kind of a training camp story to a genuine question. They go out, they get a new coach in Kubiak, who was awesome in Seattle. He comes in, he shakes things up with all the coordinator hires. They go out and spend a bunch of money in free agency to patch up some of their holes because they had the cap space to do it. They trade Max Crosby, then they don't trade Max Crosby. Shout out to the Ravens for that. But they come in and draft Fernando Mendoza, number one overall. But then they also go out and sign Kirk Cousins, which was an interesting thing. Uh, the question here to start things off: who on earth is going to take the opening night's first snap of the season at the quarterback position for the Las Vegas Raiders? Will it be Kirk Cousins, or will it be his illegitimate child in Fernando Mendoza?
That's a very great way to kind of describe them. I would have gone with Step Brothers, but I understand exactly where you're going here. I would say Kirk Cousins because you don't pay that kind of money up front if he's not going to be your week one starter. And we've seen this in years past. I'll give you a couple examples with like Jared Goff and company. Like they'll get the veteran quarterback in first, let him play a few. Jeez, Louise, you right?
Yeah, sorry, had a moment.
Um, they'll let the veteran quarterback play. They will work their way to getting Mendoza ready. Mendoza probably plays by like week 6 or 7. Um, but I think Kirk Cousins right now is the best case for them because of the talent or lack of that they have fantasy wise. So I would say Kirk Cousins is probably your week one starter as well.
I agree too, and it's weird because I'm usually on team like play your rookies, like play the dude you drafted him. They have to learn one way or another. But also, there's examples that show that that's not the move. But also, if you're a team that makes a huge upgrade in coaching, and I don't think they went out and they're going to go be a 10 or 11 win team. But what if this team starts like 4-2, 4-3 with Kirk Cousins, and then all of a sudden you feel like you made a mistake, like not made a mistake, but it's like, well, this is awkward now. How do we kind of transition back to wanting Fernando Mendoza to play at some point? So there can just be some weird moments sometimes with that. So I don't personally like it, but I agree with you. I think Kirk Cousins is going to be the starting quarterback for them on day one. And I will say, speaking of their biggest name, at least on the offensive side, Brock Bowers, who has had an immaculate start to his career, his year last year was silly. He's the preseason kind of number one overall tight end. Now Trey McBride's raw numbers from a fantasy perspective last year were better, but also it was insanely touchdown dependent considering what he did in the second half of the season. Uh, and it's just hard to repeat that. Regardless, Brock Bowers is a guy that is probably a top 20 player in fantasy, top or 25 player in fantasy overall. Do we expect another big season from him?
I do, and I feel like you have to because again, he's probably one of the uh, premier tight ends that you get on this list, and especially with the lack of other talent that you have around you, you expect him to get the majority of the targets and stuff like that. And we've seen with Kirk Cousins in years past, and including last year, mentioned Kyle Pitts again. But the fact that mentioned Kyle Pitts twice on the show already, 20 minutes in, is bonkers to me. We're not even talking about the NFC South consistently. But what I will say is, Geno was good for Brock because he was getting him the ball. I think Kirk's going to feed Brock early. I think Brock's going to have at least 10 plus targets for the first month or so. And then depending on where Mendoza is and stuff like that in his development, if he goes in, could he continue to feed him? Because again, they use Brock in a plethora of ways. They don't just use him as a tight end. They put him out in the slot. They give him plenty of targets and opportunities to succeed because that's what they need. He's legitimately a tight end wide receiver hybrid that you don't really see in today's game. And you have to use high draft pick on him, and it stinks because you think of like back in the day when you had to do the same thing for Kelsey. You had to do the same thing for
Gronk
and Jimmy Graham and all these guys that were putting up these like 300 plus point seasons every year. And you're gonna have to use the same thing for McBride when we get into him later on in our draft potential here. But it's so hard not to want to take him. But the issue is it's the Oakland Raiders. It's the Las Vegas Raiders who continue to struggle year in and year out. But there's always one guy that produces very well in fantasy. And with Clinton Kubiak and company coming in, they like to use the tight ends a lot in his kind of offensive scheme. I like it. I think he's going to be a top 5 tight end consistently every single year unless he gets hurt. My biggest worry is the transition from Kirk to Mendoza. I don't know how that will play over because we started last year with Tyler Warren from Daniel Jones to Phillip Rivers and company. It wasn't great. So seeing that in the young tight end isn't the best.
I agree with what you're saying there, especially if you have like a dip in the second half of the season. If Mendoza, like say they start out instead like 2-7, and all of a sudden it's like, all right, here comes Freddie Mendoza, and then it's like, well, 3 straight weeks since Mendoza started where Brock Bowers, has 5 or less targets because Shedrick Johnson, who's a third stringer, is getting 6 targets a game because Mendoza get these weird guys that have chemistry with the back quarterback because they played scout team all season. I agree with you on Bowers. Everything we talked about, like he is the super duper star. He is a guy that is worth taking there, but obviously, so depending on where you draft, it's for guys like him. If I feel like I want to get fishy and do it, I usually like to have like in a 10. At least I like to try to speak on things from a 10-team draft perspective. If I have like the second or third pick, like the first, second, or third pick, and on the 2 to 3 turn, I can get like my second receiver or running back, and or get So if I went, depending on what I went round 1, I can get the opposite in round 2 to get my top guy, and then get the tight end on the turn with Bowers or even McBride. That's kind of the way I really like to do it. I don't want to have the gaps. That's just kind of a philosophy that I have, but I definitely think Bowers in the late teens, early 20s, he's worth it. He's that type of guy. But there's also small concerns when you look at how you want to value him and what he can be, depending on how the Raiders handle their situation this season. The reason, though, that it's also kind of like, oh no, my goodness, no doubt that Bowers is going to have an amazing year, is because no one else on this roster is a legitimate professional NFL player when it comes to catching passes. Like, Jalen Naylor, I mean, yes, they obviously are pros, but Trey Tucker was like, congratulations. He had like 3 good games last year. Jalen Naylor was okay in Minnesota. Are any of these receivers even worth like late round sniper sleeper candidacy in your mind?
You don't want to talk about week 3 Trey Tucker, uh, wide receiver 1. That's what we want. We don't want to talk about him.
Yeah, his 9 for 145 and 3 tutties against Washington last year.
I'm telling you, the only 2 receivers that I'm kind of intrigued by, I'm hoping they give more time to Deontay Thornton this year. I really liked him last year. I thought he would fit right in, and they didn't give him the time of day. So I'm hoping that he takes that step this year. And then the other guy, Jack Beck, out of TCU in year 2 now. Just 2 guys that I like their stature, and I've seen them play in college, and I thought that they could be good for the Raiders, and then they just go, well, we're not going to use you. So I'm curious to see what this offensive, because this might be the second worst wide receiver in the league if Jalen Naylor is your wide receiver.
It's dark. It gets dark very fast.
I have a clear fucking bottom of the table wide receiver rooms. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. We'll get into it when we talk about that division and that team specifically. But the Raiders are right there if Jalen Naylor is wide receiver room good.
It's not good.
No.
I
It's a bad offensive scheme when your tight end and your running back are probably your 2 best targets consistent.
you don't like living on the edge like that?
No.
Come on now.
If I'm Clint Kubiak, I was asking for a whole lot more.
Well, listen, it's early. Speaking of running back, Ashton Genty, coming off of a weird rookie season, finishes 7th in the league in carries, only 5 touchdowns on the year, just shy of 1,000 yards, played all 17 games. He had a really weird start to his career. He struggled, he just got over 60 yards in week 3 after a struggling first 2 weeks of his career, then popped off against the Bears when their defense was kind of shiesty. Well, I guess their defense most of last year outside of turnovers was shiesty. He had a huge game against the Bears, and then again, kind of just lived in his normal-ish world. He had a really rough game against Kansas City, a terrible game against Dallas. I say all that, and then had a couple nice games at the end of the season, but only 2 games where he finished with over 100 yards last year receiving. As a pass catcher, nothing great. Couple moments here and there where he would pop off, but still, it's very short and sweet when it comes to anything he really did. 2 questions for Genty. Do we have any huge I know last year it was like you even kind of called it. We were talking about going into the season. I remember we were doing write-ups. It was like, well, Genty is a guy that everyone's going to talk about as this home run pick. He's a first rounder, no doubt about it. And you were kind of giving me some set. I wasn't really feeling that. I understood why people felt it, but you were kind of even saying everyone needs to drink the old settle down juice. So I guess the questions I have to start this: where do we expect his ADP to be right now? And where do we think that's fair? Do we think it should be higher or lower? And do we trust him to improve? What are our just general expectations?
So don't get me wrong. He finished as a top 15. He was just outside the top 10 last year. I think he finished as RB11. Right now, currently going as RB7. I think it's too high. Because again, correct, he did get almost 1,000 yards last year with that dog shit offensive line that Vegas put out there. My only worry is again the pass catching. If he's your second target, I think his stock goes up a little bit. But I don't feel comfortable enough taking a running back within the first 2 rounds, where the O line is a big problem, and consistently the tight ends also being the number 1 option on your team kind of makes it a little bit worrisome for me. And I know with Kubiak, again, we like talking about head coaches. The new offensive coordinator, I'm curious to see what he does with them. But Kubiak loves a split type of thing. Loved it with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. I'm getting the vibes a little bit between Genty and Mike Washington that could potentially happen. However, I just think that Genty, where you're getting Genty in drafts right now, in the middle of July. It's going to be the same probably in August. He might go down a little bit. I think trying to take him as a top 10 running back is going to be a little bit of a stretch for me. I'm personally not buying into Asher Genty this year. Not because I don't think he can be better, but getting him where you can get him, I would rather take another wide receiver, or I would rather wait a couple rounds and get a better running back that I think could finish higher and has higher potential than trying to take Asher Genty so high.
Yeah, like uh who would you rather have? I'm trying to look at some just try to I want to look
Well,
at
I'll, tell
some.
I'll tell you right now, two guys in this division alone I'd rather have and take later than where he's going right now. We'll dive into them as we speak. I would probably I'd rather wait around and take a Kyron Williams or a Brees Hall than take an Asher Genty, to be honest with you, just because they have that upside. Not saying that Genty doesn't have the top 5 upside, but it's just with Kyron and that offense, you know that he's going to get double-digit touchdowns. He's done it every single year. You know he's going to get over 1,000 rush yards consistently. With Brees has the upside. With Geno Smith, very much so a check-down quarterback. You know, it's going to help him. They're going to throw the ball all the time because they're going to be down. So he can easily get 50, 60 catches right off the rip there. And when he's healthy and the Jets' whole line looks a little bit better, I do think that Brees Hall can get up there. So I'd rather wait a little bit and take that. I'd even rather wait and potentially get Quinshon Judkins in the later rounds than try and take Asher Genty in the spot, just because I just don't see the value. Like if Asher Genty's going where get the David Montgomerys of the world are going, I'll feel a little bit confident because you're getting him at a discount and he has top 10 potential. But drafting him as a top 10 running back, it's just not realistic to me.
Yeah, it's one of those like it's you're asking for trouble in that case. Uh, moving on here. Looking at other teams here in this division. Let's move on to the old guard of the AFC West and the Kansas City Chiefs. Finished third in the division last year. It was a nightmare season. They never really got off the mat. We all expected them to, but they just never really could get any momentum. And by the time it felt like maybe the season could open up for them at the end of the year, their schedule finally kind of took a break. Patrick Mahomes gets hurt and he blows his knee out. All of a sudden, though, it does sound like everything is on track for him to somehow be ready for opening day. I mean, we haven't heard anything on the contrary. They have pretty much got everyone back that they wanted to offensively, and they went out and signed one of the top free agents of the offseason with Kenneth Walker, the Super Bowl MVP, coming over to be their starting running back. So we're going to get into all of those, but let's start with the big man himself, Patrick Mahomes. Clearly one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen, one of the best quarterbacks in the league when he's upright. But boy, oh boy, was it a struggle for them last season. Do we expect him to be ready for the start of the year? And also, do we expect him to be even anything close to his former self, at least to start the season coming off of this injury, his first major injury?
Again, love Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes is probably a top quarterback in this league on the field. When you look at fantasy, hasn't had a top 10 finish in the last 2 years after 6 straight. So the numbers are starting to go down a little bit. And for me, it's just a quick transition. Their wide receiver room is, I think, mediocre. You got Kelsey at age 36. You have Rashee Rice, who can't stay out of trouble. Xavier Worthy coming off an injury. Tyquan Thornton. Like, they have guys that can produce, do not get me wrong, but up to the level of where Mahomes has succeeded, where he's finished as quarterback 1 or even quarterback 2, the top 5s that he has, he's had better receiver rooms than this. That's the problem that I have with him. I think Mahomes takes a little bit to get back to it. Maybe the first month of the season will be to get the rust off. But after that, I do think that the value where you can get Patrick Mahomes, I don't think is a bad spot or a bad show. Just if you're going to draft Patrick Mahomes, do yourself a favor. Make sure you're taking one of the later quarterbacks. Make sure you're taking the Jared Goffs. Make sure you're taking the Bakers, the Kylers, guys that you can easily fill in case it just doesn't go well. So if you're going to draft them, make sure you have a good backup plan. That's all. That's all I will say, because I do think that Mahomes can't get back to it. My issue is when. Could it
Do we?
be September 13th or whatever it is that they play their first game? Or is it going to be in November when they're fighting to stay afloat in the AFC wildcard race?
Do we expect Rashee Rice to get suspended again?
I I don't know what to expect from Rasheed Rice. I don't know. That's the problem. Because of all this off the field issues, I have a problem of seeing where he is on draft boards. I have a problem of taking him. I have a problem of, even if it's the later rounds, of taking a 36-year-old Travis Kelce who just got married. I have a problem of, well, not really a problem. I'd probably throw a flyer on him just based off where his ADP was, but if he was fully healthy, I would have a problem taking Xavier Worthy in the first 6 rounds.
Rice, though, was really good last year when he came back.
Correct. What is his availability on the field?
Exactly,
If
that's the
everything
problem.
gets cleared up and we talk about him again in late August, early September, completely different.
Mm-hmm.
But it has to get cleared up in order for this to be successful. If he can't get anything cleared up, they're going to – Tyquan Thornton is going to be their wide receiver pick.
Yeah, and let's just be real here. I mean, he probably shouldn't get it cleared up. Like, let's just say that. So I'm just going to throw that out there. But Kenneth Walker is the biggest story for them getting signed. Their offensive line, they have seemed to potentially patch together, some of their holes from last season. They kind of started to finally figure out where certain guys were supposed to be at before the Mahomes injury. So Ken Walker coming to the Chiefs. We've already mentioned on previous episodes about new faces, new places, and Kenneth Walker is top of the list. It almost feels like for this team to be them signing Walker almost feels like them saying, for us to be what we want to be, we have to establish the run more. We have to take the load off Mahomes. We have to make sure that he doesn't have to be God every week for us to even have a chance to win. So with all that being said, it feels like Kenneth Walker might actually be in pack for the best fantasy season he's ever had in his career.
Correct. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Even though he hasn't had a top 15 fantasy fantasy running back season, Kenneth Walker, to me personally, is going to be the bell cow of this team. I'm not trusting Emmett Johnson, the rookie. I'm not trusting anybody that the Chiefs have as backup running back potentials here to take touches away from this guy. I think with this new offensive line, I think with the new OC, them bringing back Eric Bieniemy, I do think that the sky is the limit for Kenneth Walker here. I have a hot take that he could potentially be a top 2 running back this year. That is how high I am on Kenneth Walker. I think he has that kind of potential to put up, I would say, a 350-plus piece for the Chiefs this year.
We're going to continue to go back and forth on, I think maybe eventually as a quick video idea, what we can maybe do like an insanely rapid-fire mock draft when we get close to August. So I just want to kind of throw this out here to you right now. Like, how early is still like not too early to take Walker? Like, at what point is it like, okay, like where you're not going to feel like, oh man, like obviously for what we think he can be, you have taking him earlier is the better to try to beat some of your sharper teammate or sharper league mates. But where do you feel like you can snipe Walker before potentially his normal ADP value would be, considering his fantasy history?
I would say in 10-man leagues, if I'm picking at the 106, I'm taking him on the way back. If I'm 12-man, and this is what I've been doing in my mock drafts, if I'm in my 12-man leagues, I'm picking 10, for example, I'm taking him in the second round. Because what I feel is, for me, in the second round on the way back, it's either you double up on wide receivers if you're drafting late and getting a duo of CD, Amon-Ra, and Justin Jefferson, or I'm taking one of those 3 in my first round, and in the second round, I'm taking either Kenneth Walker or Saquon Barkley. Those are the names right there off the rip that I'm touching in my 12-man if I'm getting in the back half. If I'm in the 10-man and I'm in kind of the middle of the pack here, I'm taking him anywhere between pick 12 to pick 18. I
So
think
he's a second.
I think consistently he's a second round pick.
Okay. That's kind of what I was curious of. Do you think he's a second round pick? Do you think he's an early third round pick? You
I
know,
think he's a second
where
round pick. I would take him over probably 2/3 of the running backs that would go from the second round to like the late third.
like let me just pull up the old league chart here. Like just looking through some of these, I mean, we take him over anybody in the AFC South or AFC North. AFC South, we would take him over three of the four running backs. We take him over. We wouldn't take him over Jonathan Taylor. I would say, obviously.
I
We
would, as someone who's not high on Jonathan Taylor this year, I think Kenneth Walker has the
let's
potential
say
to be higher than
consensus.
Jonathan.
Let's say
Consensus.
consensus.
Well,
Yes.
let's put it this way: Jonathan Taylor shouldn't be a first round pick, in my quote unquote expert opinion. So
Right. Yeah. That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
I would say
Consensus. Yeah.
consensus will say yes, but I will say the consensus will be done to taking him over Kenneth Walker.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned around Barkley. You mentioned around. I mean, he'd go over the Bears running back, so I think they'll be really good. They're just going to be kind of mid, like they're going to be in the middle area of your
So
draft.
let's put it this way: let's do this. Jeremiah Love will go over.
Mm-hmm.
Chase Brown will go over. He should go over Devon Achane and Ashton Jenkins.
He'll go. He'll be. I will say this. So we don't have to sit here and go through every team. In that A-Chain Genty range, I think is perfect for where his potential draft stock should be as of right now.
He should be taken as the top 5 fantasy running back, in my opinion.
I think it's. I agree with you that it's definitely on the board that he could have that big a season. Moving on to the Chargers.
Before we do that,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
a word from our sponsor, Joseph.
Yeah, I know. I totally forgot. Go ahead.
I know you did. So this episode of the Fantasy Football Underbosses is brought to you by BetVisors. Are you tired of paying for picks and hoping to see results? Check out BetVisors, the platform that changes the game with their tip if it hits model. You get to follow verified handicappers, see transparent records, win rates, and profit history, and only tip when a pick actually wins. There's no expensive subscriptions, no paying for losing plays, just real bettors, real results, a real community with complete transparency. Whether you're looking for expert analysis, proven cappers, or a smarter way to tail picks, BetVisors puts accountability first. Do us a favor, visit app.betvisors.com. Again, that's app.betvisors, that's BETVISORS.com, and start betting smarter today.
Wouldn't it have been cool if my bottle here had like a BetVisors sticker on it? That would have been something. That would have been good branding.
BetVisors, hook it up, man. Let's go.
There we go. Get us some fatheads. Remember when fathead was a craze? Those were the days, man. Those were the days. O to B12 again. Next up, the Chargers. An interesting year for the Chargers last season. They have expectations, but they once again kind of fall short of them. Depending on where you thought their expectations could actually be. They finish as the 7 seed. They get bounced in round 1 and they look very ugly in that matchup. But then again, their entire offensive line and their backups all got hurt. So, who's to blame here? Speaking of their skill positions, though, Omari and Hampton had a bit of an interesting season last year with some ups and downs with some injuries. Hampton kind of started to come along as the season went on. He ended up finishing with just under 550 yards on the year. He ended up playing in only 9 games. He really got shut down in that. He only had 1 carry in the playoff game. He got hurt early on in the season, finally came back right around December. So had some okay moments, nothing spectacular, but definitely had some signs of, okay, this could be a guy that is a legitimate pro, which is what we thought when he was drafted. So we start by asking this. Where do you look at Omari and Hampton's stock as we head into his second year in the NFL?
The stock, in my opinion, is up. And 3 reasons why. First reason, new offense coordinator, Mike McDaniel. New OC in town, He's had a top 5 fantasy running back in the last 3 years with A Chain in 24 and 25. And yes, it's gross to say it, but Raheem Mostert in 2023. I think they retool the offensive line. I think you get a little bit of the snippet of the stock up with his 2 top 10 finishes last year um, in the weekly rankings. I have huge hopes for him. He is one of these running backs that I'm very, very high on. I think this offense as a whole is going to be great, personally, with Mike McDaniel. We've seen what he can do, so I'm very excited. But for me, Omari and Hampton's stock is up as probably high as it can get.
Do you worry that there could be any sort of split action here? Like Keaton Mitchell has always been more of a small, like nerdy name than actually a producer in the NFL so far when he was on Baltimore. But he's on the Chargers now, and he could be a guy that someone like a Mike McDaniel could like. I assume I agree. I'm with you, like on Hampton. Like this could be a massive breakout year for him. Um, but Mitchell is a fantastic. I think in this offense, I think Keaton Mitchell is a fantastic handcuff option.
I don't disagree with you. I just think that again, one of the big things that McDaniel's likes is a powerful runner, which Omari Hampton is, and a guy who can catch out of the backfield, which Omari Hampton can do. So I think for me, Omari Hampton is there. I think he's going to get 80+% of the workload there. Not saying that Keaton Mitchell can't take away touches from him because we've seen him do it before. But again, his biggest thing is staying on the field. Struggled to do that last couple of seasons. So if Keaton Mitchell can stay on the field, maybe by like the middle of the season we start seeing a little bit less on Omari Hampton because of fatigue. But early on, man, Omari Hampton's going to have 20+ touches.
And we all know McDaniel has a very slick running game system. Problem was in Miami, he could never utilize it because his offensive lines were ass. Let's just be real. Now, the Chargers' offensive line situation has not been any better, but that has been more due to the fact that, I don't know, all of them have been injured. So, can someone stay healthy? That's all we ask. Can anybody stay healthy for the love of God?
It'd be nuts.
It would be great, honestly, just for this team and just for this guy. We used to be Justin Herbert truthers in this house. It has the winters have been cold more times than not. Justin Herbert, do you think he is worthy of being a potential top 5 preseason quarterback in the world of fantasy?
I think where you're getting him at, yes. Because again, with the way the offense looked last year, he finished top 10 in fantasy quarterbacks, which is great. Again, this with the Mike McDaniel boost, I just think that this is the best offensive unit he's had since 2021 when he finished as the top 5 fantasy quarterback. I think the sky's there. I'm buying the Justin Herbert hype this year. I've been saying it for years. I'm a Justin Herbert guy. I'm the president of the Justin Herbert Truther Club. However, it's been cold, like you said. I think now the dome kicks off. We get the hot sun in LA. I think Herbert and company locked in, loaded. I'm buying the hype on Justin Herbert this year to finish potentially as the top 5 fantasy.
You would just think for getting an offensive mind in there that is not archaic and, dinosaur Stone Age, Greg Roman. Sorry. But I'm not sorry. Like, you just got to think, and maybe having somewhat of a creative running game. And please, for the love of God, again, can their offensive line stay healthy? You just have to think that that'll matter some way, right? However, for Herbert in general, it would be really my biggest thing for him that I've really just been bugabooed by the last couple, like this year or last year, was, dude, his decision making just hit the dumpster. Like, I feel like maybe he took more risks at times, but also his brain, it seemed like, short circuited too many times. I would love just to see the aggressiveness that he had when he was in his first couple seasons, but also like, just not the dumb stuff. That is where I am at with Herbert right now because I think he's awesome. I think he can be awesome in the fantasy world and the real world, but the turnovers is what is really worrying me.
He just needs the consistent wide receiver,
which is a fantastic segue because with this new offense, gives this team some opportunity to have some a massive breakout candidate. Now, just looking at not wide receiver, tight end, Oronde Gadsden kind of came alive at the end of last season. I think he's a very solid option. Quentin Johnston had his best year as a pro. Trey Harris is a guy that maybe could step in and be a nice player, but Ladd McConkey is a guy who he was really good as a rookie. Finished with just under 1,200 yards. Last season, same uptick or same amount of target share, but and more catches but excuse me, less catches, less yards, still in the same realm of touchdowns. Do we think he can kind of get that upswing back and have a breakout type season like among the names of kind of like a Drake London from last year being a top 5 guy, or JSN being an offensive player of the year candidate? Could Ladd McConkey flirt in those neighborhoods?
I really do think so. And again, where are you getting this guy, man? Where are you getting Drake London and JSN last year? Between rounds 3 and 5, I think it's the perfect spot for him. You get Ladd in round 4 right now. Mike McDaniel, another guy who's had top 5 wide receiver finishes with 4. Tyreek Hill in 22 and 23 finishes wide receiver 2 in that kind of offense. I think the biggest thing is last year, Herbert, the decision making was a little shaky. We all agreed. But I do think that now he has more weapons. Gadsden is a consistent weapon for him. Trey Harris has been good. Quentin Johnson can go down the field and create a little chaos. They also bring in David Njoku, who's a very good separator as well. So they have a lot of guys that can separate, which I think means more open looks for Ladd in the slot. If I'm not taking Omarion Hampton in my league, I'm getting Ladd McConkey. I'm having one of the two in every single draft that I'm walking out with. I'm buying into the Chargers offense this year because of Mike McDaniel, because he is a very offensive-minded coach. We saw as a head coach, his defense wasn't the greatest, but offensively, he has the scheme that works. And with a decent quarterback like a Justin Herbert, I can see the sky's the limit for this offense. I think both Marion Hampton and Ladd McConkey will finish top 10 at their positions. I think Ladd has the potential to finish top 5 this year.
Do you think that having McDaniel can allow McConkey to get easier touches?
I agree.
A creative route tree.
Yes, the route tree is key there. I think that's the big thing because again, with Tyreek Hill, you have a unique skill set, right? Jalen Waddle had a unique skill set, and he had some separation issues points in times, but the route tree alone with Ladd McConkey is going to be tremendous. It's probably going to be the best he's had since maybe his sophomore year at Georgia.
Yeah, I agree. And I really like the possibility. Like one of my favorite charts last year to see was certain players and the routes they ran. Like that Amazon Next Gen stat, and JSN was one of the more creative guys in the NFL when it came to that. So like I can already see McConkey going from just this archaic Stone Age offense that Greg Roman ran to just Mike McDaniel, like, look at all this fun that I can have with this scrawny white boy. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be so much fun. But last up, the team who, maybe probably should have represented the AFC in the Super Bowl, but they didn't. All that matters is the wins and the losses. The Denver Broncos. What a year they had last year, finishing 13-4 and making the top seed in 14-3, top seed in the AFC. They get to the AFC title game, but Bo Nix breaks his ankle literally on the last play of the game while trying to take an each set-up field goal in one of the dumbest games in the history, but also exciting games in the history of the NFL in that Bills-Broncos game. And then the Broncos-Patriots game was dumb and exciting for all the wrong reasons the following week. But the Broncos coming in, a lot of different ways that you can chop this Broncos season up. We know they like what they have. This team has really come alive over the last season and with Sean Payton and what we'd expect. But let's take a look at this here fantasy-wise and start with this. This Broncos team coming into last year, we had questions on, okay, they go out and they sign J.K. Dobbins going into last season. They draft R.J. Harvey. Who's going to be the consistent guy? Well, J.K. Dobbins comes out with a year and has a pretty good year. He finishes with just under 800 yards on the season, and RJ and has a couple really important moments for them. RJ Harvey finishes with 7 touchdowns, 540 yards on the season. Uh, do we expect a jump from Harvey? Dobbins to stay consistent? Is there one of these two running backs that you potentially trust to be a no doubt lineup cracker for you in 2026?
Consistently, no. But if I had to pick, I think I'm taking Harvey. The upside's there. He had 7 top 12 finishes last year. Dobbins has been banged up his entire career. And even if, like, all the dynasty people talk about Jonah Coleman, Jonah Coleman, fine running back. I think he's got potential. But I think the issue with Jonah Coleman is the workload won't suffice him, I think. And I think if anybody's going to get the majority of the touches out of the running back room, it's going to be RJ Harvey to start the year. I think consistently he's probably going to be the better back that they have. I just don't trust them consistently. So I would probably stay away personally, but if I had to pick, I think I'm taking RJ.
Jonah Coleman would have been perfect if he would have been drafted by a team that didn't already have 2 running backs in front of him. But unfortunately,
Jonah Coleman to Seattle was what I was thinking was going to be the best move. So,
but yes, in this kid's situation, I think I'd still probably lean Dobbins to a degree because they clearly believe in him to bring him back, and he's only 27. And I thought for a guy that had a couple really rough stretches of there to end his Baltimore career, he had a good season in LA, and then comes in last year, plays 10 games, but he does have a pretty good season. I like what he can do, and I think that for what they're wanting, if he can just stay healthy, and that's the biggest thing right now for him is staying healthy. And you can argue that for both of these guys. Wide receiver, though, is where this team really got a major bump in the offseason. They go out and sign or trade for, Jalen Waddle to kind of just fill out this room more. It's a lot of names that you at moments, at any given week, you're like, oh my God, look what he did. Pat Bryant, ILL. Well, remember, he probably had a game or two where you kind of blew your mind. Troy Franklin always has a moment. Him and Bo Nix were teammates, for God's sake. Cortland Sutton is very, very consistent. Marvin Mims has some real explosive moments. He's a great special teams player, but all of a sudden he'll pop off for a huge explosive touchdown. Evan Ingram, who had over 100 catches a couple of years ago in Jacksonville, last year kind of never really seemed to get his engine started. Just a weird year for him. Finishes with 460 yards, only 1 touchdown on the season for him. We mentioned they go out and get Jalen Waddle. Lil Jordan Humphrey on the team. At least his name is just fun to say. But regardless, this team has a lot of names at receiver. Are any of them insanely consistent? Because Don, I know you'll agree with me. The problem with this team, for just trying to pick and choose somebody to have on your fantasy roster, like Sutton is a guy that has been a top 20 guy. Waddle has the potential, but boy, oh boy, were the last 2 years for him in Miami a disaster. I just mentioned like 7 or 8 guys, and Sean Payton is the ultimate spin the wheel of skill position player for who he wants to start in the game plan that week. Where are you at when it comes to upside? Who has the most upside when it comes to pass catchers on the Broncos?
I think personally, when you're looking at pass catchers, I think Cortland Sutton is the wide receiver. You can get him in 3 rounds later than people are taking Jalen Waddle, and I think Sutton's finished in the top 15 the last 2 seasons, and with Bo Nix, he's getting the consistency. Over 100-plus targets every year, over 1,000 yards in the 2 seasons with Bo Nix. So with that, I think I'm taking Sutton because of the consistency. I know that Jalen Waddle is going to come in. I don't see him being this big play threat that's going to help them. But what I do think is I think it takes a little bit of the pressure off of Sutton, which means a lot more one-on-one coverage, which I think will create more opportunities for both guys. So I would probably take Cortland Sutton as like a flex option as a wide receiver. I don't think I'd be taking Jalen Waddle as high as he's going. And just thinking about anybody else on this team is just disgusting because week in and week out, Like you could buy into the Troy Frankens of the world because he had 5 catches for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns in week 5, and then you spot start him in week 6 because somebody's on a bye and he has 0 targets for 0 receptions and 0 yards. So I think the consistent guy would be Cortland Sutton. I think Waddle can get there, but I'll take the guy who's been more consistent with the quarterback already in Sutton.
Exactly. You could have 7 catches for 80, or you could have 6 catches for 85 yards from Marvin Mims in a comeback win against the Giants. But then in the following 4 games combined, has 3 catches for 13 yards. So, you know, spin the wheel, baby. Spin the wheel and make a deal when it comes to the wide receivers for the Denver Broncos. Lastly, Bo Nix had himself an amazing year last year. He was a Pro Bowl level player. He was on the verge of trying to lead his team to the Super Bowl. And it's easy to kind of say, yeah, Bo Nix, I mean, yes and no to certain things, but at the end of the day, he was incredibly consistent and he did, in moments he had to, he put up some gaudy numbers and also some really good performances. I'm not sitting here and saying I'm a Bo lever, but I will say he went eye to eye with Josh Allen in the playoffs and was the better quarterback. And I don't think it was close considering what Josh Allen did in puking all over. I'll mute myself for a second. So I say all that to say, I say all that to say this for Bo Nix. We expect coming off the injury for him to have to kind of fall back to earth. We expect for him to kind of be consistent, maybe put up some even better numbers. Where do we have any concern with Knicks coming into this season? Where are we at on the quarterback for the Denver Broncos?
I mean, it's kind of hard to not like the guy. The guy's outperformed his quarterback draft rank in his first 2 seasons. He's finished as QB7 in each of his first 2 seasons. So, I mean, he threw the ball a ton last year, 3,900 passing yards last year. He has been the 30 touchdown market, which I think will bump him into the top 5 if he gets there. But I do think that this is the most complete receiver room that he's had. And I understand the injury, the ankle. He's participating in 7-on-7 right now. He's doing all the minicamp stuff. He's doing everything that he needs to do. So I'm buying into him, especially at that spot, man. I mean, listen, if there's a chance that, like, again, he's another guy. If you're taking Mahomes to be your starting quarterback, Bo Nix is a good guy to have as a backup because if Mahomes goes down, Nix can just easily fill right in. And, I mean, listen, it's going to be tough because, again, there are going to be guys that you draft with that don't take a quarterback to the late. And that late quarterback's going to be a guy like Bo Nix or Jared Goff. And they're consistently top 10 fantasy options every single year. So I think you have to give them the respect until they show you otherwise.
I the fact that he has been able to not just kind of have any super gaudy, like he has some good, like just from a numbers perspective, he doesn't sit here and just rip off these crazy statistical games, but he's just consistent. And I do feel like I'm never going to sit here and say if I'm actually ranking legitimate, if I'm just ranking quarterbacks in the league, I'm never going to put him in the top 10. He's barely cracking the top 15. However, when it comes to fantasy football, he does a lot and is able to add some value in the run game. He protects the ball. You mentioned if he can have a touchdown spike, how that would, well, not a spike, but
If
just an
he can
uptick.
go from 25 to 30,
Right, just an uptick, and even a few more yards. He's at 4,000. I think that is an absolute spot for him to jump, and I believe that he's going to continue to be kind of a 4 to 5 rushing touchdown a year guy. So that's something to add for him. He's absolutely worth, like when you look at quarterbacks in fantasy, I think there's probably 3 or 4 guys that are no doubters at the top. He's absolutely worth being in that second or third tier.
I mean, because also too, if you look at his week to week, he only had 5 top 10 finishes last year. Like, having 5 top 10 finishes, you're thinking that you're kind of outside the top 10, maybe like 12, 13. He's finishing as quarterback 7, so clearly he's doing something right.
And that
never
means he's
he
never
hasn't
having
scored.
bad weeks.
Correct. He hasn't scored less than 315 fantasy points in the season. And I think him coming in as an older rookie, I think definitely helped it. Right now, he's kind of in the prime of his career. So, unless a big time injury comes, I just don't see the fall off happening.
Agreed. That's the thing. Like, if he has injuries flare up, like, I don't think he's going to regress. I think that the coaching and the team in general around him is too good for him to just kind of all of a sudden take a huge step back. So,
Because realistically, how I view him as Jared Goff. Jared Goff's been a top 10 fantasy quarterback in 4 out of his 5 seasons in Detroit, and including his last 4 seasons. He gets taken as like quarterback between 13 and fucking 20 every fucking year, and he finishes within the top 10 every time. Every time. So like that's that's where Bo Nix is right now. And I think that's where he's gonna consistently stay.
well, with all that being said and done, we are over the hour mark and we are through our second division and our third episode of the Fantasy Underbosses. Want to thank again our sponsor, BetVisors. Make sure you go to or app.betvisors.com and take a look at what they got. Sign up today. Other than that, Don, any final words before we get on out of here to close episode 3?
Like Joe said earlier in the show, make sure we're liking the video on YouTube. Make sure we're subscribing to the YouTube channel. Make sure we're following us on Twitter at FF Underbosses. Big shout out to our sponsor, BetVisors. Again, app.betvisors.com. Start betting, be smarter today. Don't forget that, because trust me when I tell you, it helps you develop systems and it helps you find guys that you can follow consistently and make it a big time uh, bankroll increaser. And finally, last but not least, shout out your boy, yourself, myself. 2,000 followers officially on Twitter. We're getting there. Road to 3K starts now.
We love that. We thank for the support for all of our channels, for all of our content that we're making. We want to thank you for hanging out with us. We will be back next week with another video. Until then, this has been the Fantasy Underbosses. Follow us on Twitter at FF Underbosses. We really appreciate all of the support. We'll see you next time. For Don, I'm Joe. Until then, we're out, y'all. Peace.